The morning light filtered through the ancient windows of Windsor Castle as King Charles III prepared for what would become one of the most emotionally charged Christmas addresses in royal history. December 2024 had arrived with a weight that pressed down on the royal family like a heavy blanket, and Charles could feel every ounce of that burden as he reviewed his speech notes one final time. In the months leading up to this moment, the king had faced challenges that no amount of constitutional training could have prepared him for. His daughter-in-law, Catherine, Princess of Wales, had been diagnosed with cancer earlier that year, sending shockwaves through not just the royal family, but the entire nation. The woman who had become the people's princess, beloved for her warmth, dedication, and natural grace, was fighting a private battle that the public could only glimpse through carefully worded statements and, increasingly rare public appearances. Charles had always maintained a special relationship with Catherine. From the moment his eldest son William had introduced her to the family, the king had recognized something remarkable in the young woman from Berkshire. She possessed a quality that couldn't be taught in royal protocol classes or learned through years of constitutional study. Catherine had an innate understanding of what it meant to serve, coupled with a genuine warmth that made everyone around her feel valued and seen. The king remembered their early conversations, long before he wore the crown, when Catherine was still finding her footing in the complex world of royal life. She would ask him thoughtful questions about his charitable work, about his vision for the monarchy's future, about how to balance personal authenticity with public duty. Charles had been impressed by her intelligence and touched by her genuine desire to make a meaningful contribution to the causes she would eventually champion. As the years passed, their relationship had deepened into something that transcended the formal bonds of royal in-laws. Catherine had become like a daughter to him, someone whose counsel he valued and whose happiness genuinely mattered to him. When she and William faced challenges, Charles felt protective in a way that surprised him with its intensity. When they celebrated milestones, his joy was authentic and profound. The cancer diagnosis had hit Charles particularly hard because it reminded him of his own recent battle with the disease. Just months earlier, he had undergone treatment for cancer himself, an experience that had given him intimate knowledge of the fear, uncertainty, and physical toll that Catherine was now enduring. The king understood the sleepless nights, the moments of doubt, the way such a diagnosis could make even the strongest person feel suddenly fragile and vulnerable. But Charles also knew something else about cancer that perhaps only fellow survivors could truly understand. He knew about the incredible strength that could emerge from such darkness, about the way facing mortality could clarify what truly mattered in life, and about the profound gratitude that could bloom even in the midst of treatment and uncertainty. He wanted desperately to share this knowledge with Catherine, to offer her the comfort of his experience and the reassurance of his unwavering support. The challenge lay in how to do this appropriately within the constraints of royal protocol and public expectation. The Christmas address was one of the most formal and traditionally structured events in the royal calendar. It was watched by millions of people across the Commonwealth, analyzed by constitutional experts, and scrutinized for every nuance of meaning. How could he use such a platform to offer personal comfort without overstepping the boundaries of appropriate royal communication? Charles spent weeks wrestling with this question. He consulted with his private secretaries, spoke quietly with trusted advisors, and spent long hours in contemplation. The answer, when it came to him, was both elegant and profound in its simplicity. He would honor Catherine not by breaking with tradition, but by weaving his tribute so seamlessly into the fabric of royal custom that it would feel both completely appropriate and deeply personal. The king's approach would require a delicate balance. He needed to acknowledge Catherine's struggle without violating her privacy, offer support without seeming to speak for the family's private feelings, and demonstrate love without compromising the dignity and formality that the occasion demanded. It was a challenge that would test every skill he had developed during his decades of preparation for the throne. As Charles reviewed his speech that December morning, he thought about the millions of families who would be gathering around their televisions that evening, many of whom would be facing their own challenges and struggles. Some would be dealing with illness, others with loss, financial hardship, or family conflicts. The Christmas address had always served as a moment of national unity, a time when the monarch spoke not just to his subjects but with them, acknowledging shared experiences and common hopes. This year, Charles realized his personal connection to Catherine's struggle could serve a larger purpose. By honoring her courage and resilience, he could speak to everyone who was facing adversity. By celebrating her commitment to service even in the midst of personal challenge, he could remind the nation of the values that bound them together. By demonstrating the royal family's capacity for love and support, he could model the kind of compassion and solidarity that communities needed to thrive. The king's staff had prepared the recording studio with particular care, knowing that this address would carry extra emotional weight. The decorations were chosen to convey warmth and hope, the lighting was adjusted to create an atmosphere of intimate conversation, and every detail was considered to support the message of resilience and unity that Charles wanted to convey. As the time for recording approached, Charles felt a familiar mixture of nervousness and determination. He had delivered dozens of Christmas addresses over the years, first as Prince of Wales delivering alternative messages, and now as king carrying on the tradition established by his mother. But this one felt different. This one carried the weight of personal love alongside constitutional duty, private emotion alongside public responsibility. The king took a deep breath and thought of Catherine, perhaps resting at home with her family, perhaps undergoing treatment, perhaps simply trying to find moments of normalcy amid the chaos that cancer brings to any household. He thought of William, carrying his own burden of worry while trying to maintain strength for his wife and children. He thought of his grandchildren, George, Charlotte, and Louis, navigating their mother's illness with the resilience and confusion that children bring to such situations. Most of all, he thought about the message he wanted to send, not just to Catherine and his family, but to everyone who would be listening. In a world that often seemed divided and harsh, Charles wanted to remind his audience that love, compassion, and mutual support were not just noble ideals but practical necessities for building the kind of society where everyone could flourish. The speech he was about to deliver would become a defining moment of his reign, a demonstration that true kingship meant knowing when to let humanity shine through the crown. It would show the world that even in the most formal of settings, there was room for authentic emotion, genuine care, and the kind of love that transcends titles and traditions. As Charles prepared to step before the cameras, he carried with him not just the weight of the crown, but the love of a father-in-law who had found a way to honor someone precious to him while serving the broader needs of his people. The gentle regal salute he was about to deliver would touch hearts across the Commonwealth and establish a new standard for what it meant to be both monarch and family member in the modern age. The recording studio fell silent as King Charles III settled into his chair, the familiar weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like an old, comfortable coat. Behind the cameras, his production team waited with respectful attention, knowing they were about to capture something special. The king's private secretary, Sir Clive Alderton, stood quietly in the corner, having worked closely with Charles for months to craft the perfect balance between personal warmth and constitutional propriety. Charles had always been a thoughtful communicator, someone who understood the power of words and the responsibility that came with having the nation's attention. But today's address would require a different kind of skill. He needed to speak in layers, crafting a message that would resonate on multiple levels simultaneously. The surface would carry his traditional Christmas message of hope, service, and unity. Beneath that, carefully woven throughout, would be his tribute to Catherine, so subtle that only those who knew what to look for would recognize its full meaning. The king's approach had been inspired by a conversation with his late mother, Queen Elizabeth II, years earlier. She had once told him that the most effective royal communication happened not through grand gestures or dramatic statements, but through the accumulation of small, consistent signals that build trust over time. The crown speaks loudest, she had said, when it whispers with genuine intent. Charles had taken that lesson to heart as he crafted his Christmas address. Rather than delivering a single, obvious tribute to Catherine, he had decided to weave references to her throughout the entire speech, creating a pattern that would honor her values, acknowledge her struggle, and celebrate her contributions without ever mentioning her by name or directly referencing her illness. The first layer of his tribute would focus on the theme of service in the face of adversity. Catherine had become known for her unwavering commitment to her royal duties even while dealing with her cancer diagnosis. She had continued to support her patronages, albeit in modified ways, and had insisted on maintaining some public engagements when her health permitted. Charles wanted to celebrate this dedication while speaking to the broader principle that service to others could be a source of strength during difficult times. The second layer would address the importance of family support and community solidarity. Charles knew that Catherine's journey had been made easier by the love and support of her family, particularly William's steadfast presence by her side. The king wanted to use his platform to emphasize how communities, like families, could thrive when their members supported each other through challenges. The third layer would focus on hope and resilience, drawing on his own recent experience with cancer to speak authentically about the possibility of healing and renewal even in the darkest moments. This would be the most delicate part of his tribute, requiring him to speak about personal experience without revealing private medical details or presuming to speak for Catherine's journey. As the cameras began to roll, Charles drew upon decades of public speaking experience to project calm authority while allowing genuine emotion to color his words. His opening remarks followed the traditional format, acknowledging the Christmas season and its significance for families across the Commonwealth. But, even in these conventional phrases, those who knew him well could detect the extra warmth in his voice, the slightly more intimate tone that suggested this address would be different from others. The king began to weave his first subtle tribute by speaking about the quiet heroes who served their communities without seeking recognition or reward. He painted a picture of individuals who continued to fulfill their responsibilities even when facing personal challenges, who found strength in helping others even when they themselves needed support. The language was carefully chosen to honor Catherine's approach to her royal duties while speaking to the universal experience of finding purpose through service. Charles's voice carried a particular weight as he spoke about healthcare workers, teachers, and community volunteers who had continued their vital work throughout the year despite facing their own struggles. The metaphor was clear to those who understood. Just as these everyday heroes found meaning in their service to others, so too had members of his own family demonstrated that dedication to duty could be a source of strength rather than a burden. The king's second major tribute came as he discussed the importance of family bonds during difficult times. He spoke with evident emotion about how families could be sources of extraordinary strength when they faced challenges together, how love could provide a foundation that remained steady even when everything else seemed uncertain. His words painted a picture of mutual support, of family members who lifted each other up and shared both burdens and joys. The personal nature of these observations was unmistakable to anyone who understood the royal family's recent experiences. Charles was speaking not just about family in general, but about his own family's journey through a difficult year. His voice carried the authority of someone who had witnessed firsthand how love could sustain people through their darkest moments and how the simple act of standing together could make seemingly impossible challenges manageable. As the king continued his address, he began to touch on themes that directly reflected Catherine's charitable interests and personal passions. He spoke about early childhood development, mental health awareness, and the importance of supporting vulnerable members of society. Each reference was woven naturally into the broader narrative of his address, but together they created a portrait of values and priorities that anyone familiar with Catherine's work would immediately recognize. The beauty of Charles's approach lay in its subtlety. He was creating a parallel narrative that honored Catherine's contributions while speaking to universal themes that would resonate with his entire audience. Families dealing with illness would hear his words about resilience and mutual support. Young people pursuing their own paths of service would be inspired by his celebration of quiet dedication. Community leaders would be encouraged by his recognition of their efforts. The king's personal experience with cancer added an extra layer of authenticity to his words about hope and healing. When he spoke about the possibility of renewal and growth even after periods of difficulty, his audience could hear the voice of someone who had walked that path himself. This wasn't theoretical optimism but hard-earned wisdom, the kind that only comes from facing genuine adversity and emerging with a deeper appreciation for life's possibilities. Charles also used his address to highlight the role that public support and encouragement could play in helping people through difficult times. He spoke about the power of community solidarity, about how knowing that others cared and were sending good wishes could provide comfort during moments of isolation or fear. This was another carefully crafted tribute to Catherine, acknowledging the outpouring of public support she had received while encouraging his audience to continue offering that kind of compassion to everyone facing challenges. The production team watched with growing admiration as the king navigated these complex emotional and constitutional territories with remarkable skill. He was demonstrating a level of communication mastery that few public figures ever achieve, the ability to speak simultaneously to multiple audiences while maintaining perfect appropriateness for his formal role. Behind the cameras, Sir Clive Alderton recognized that they were witnessing a defining moment in Charles's reign. This address would be remembered not just for its content but for its demonstration of how a modern monarch could honor family relationships while serving the broader needs of the nation. It showed how traditional forms could be infused with contemporary humanity without losing their dignity or effectiveness. As Charles moved toward the final sections of his address, the cumulative impact of his subtle tributes was becoming clear. He had created a tapestry of honor that celebrated Catherine's courage, acknowledged her struggle, and reinforced the values she represented, all while delivering a Christmas message that spoke to the hopes and challenges facing his entire realm. The king's approach would prove to be more powerful than any direct statement could have been. By weaving his tribute throughout the fabric of his traditional address, he had elevated both Catherine's story and the broader themes of resilience, service, and family support that defined the best of human nature. His gentle regal salute was becoming a masterpiece of royal communication. As King Charles III reached the heart of his Christmas address, the emotional weight of his carefully crafted message began to build toward its most powerful moments. The recording studio, already charged with anticipation, seemed to hold its breath as the king prepared to deliver what would become the most memorable passages of his speech. His years of experience as a public speaker had taught him the importance of rhythm and pacing, and he could feel the natural crescendo approaching. The king's tribute to Catherine entered a new phase as he began to speak more directly about courage in the face of uncertainty. His voice took on a deeper resonance as he addressed the millions of people who were facing their own health challenges, their own moments of fear and doubt. Charles drew upon his personal experience with cancer treatment, but he spoke in terms universal enough to encompass Catherine's journey and that of countless others dealing with serious illness. His words about courage were particularly poignant because they came from someone who understood the specific kind of bravery required to face a cancer diagnosis while maintaining public responsibilities. Charles spoke about the strength it took to continue serving others when one's own future felt uncertain, about the grace required to accept help while continuing to give support to those around you. Every phrase was carefully chosen to honor Catherine's approach to her illness while speaking to the broader human experience of finding strength in adversity. The king's production team noticed how his delivery became more intimate as he spoke about these themes. The formal distance that traditionally characterized royal addresses seemed to diminish, replaced by the warm directness of someone sharing hard-earned wisdom with people he genuinely cared about. This shift in tone was deliberate, calculated to make his tribute to Catherine feel more personal and authentic while still maintaining the dignity appropriate to his position. Charles then moved to what many would later consider the most brilliant aspect of his tribute. Rather than speaking about Catherine directly, he began to celebrate the qualities she embodied, painting a portrait so precise that anyone who knew her would immediately recognize the description. He spoke about individuals who approached their responsibilities with a combination of dedication and joy, who found ways to connect with people from all walks of life, and who maintained their essential humanity even in the most formal settings. The king's description of what he called modern servants of the people was masterful in its specificity. He celebrated those who used their platforms to champion causes close to their hearts, who brought innovation and fresh perspectives to traditional roles, and who demonstrated that service could be both deeply serious and genuinely fun. Every word was chosen to reflect Catherine's unique contributions to royal life while celebrating the broader principle of engaged, authentic public service. Charles's voice carried particular warmth as he spoke about the importance of nurturing future generations and supporting families during their most vulnerable moments. This was a direct acknowledgement of Catherine's passionate work in early childhood development and her focus on maternal mental health. The king's words painted a picture of someone who understood that investing in children and families was essential to building a stronger, more compassionate society. The beauty of this approach was that it allowed Charles to celebrate Catherine's professional achievements while honoring her personal struggle. By speaking about the importance of supporting families through difficult times, he was simultaneously acknowledging his own family's journey through Catherine's illness and encouraging his audience to extend similar support to their own loved ones facing challenges. The king then delivered what many constitutional experts would later identify as a revolutionary moment in royal communication. Speaking with evident emotion about the healing power of love and support, Charles allowed his own feelings as a concerned family member to shine through his formal role as monarch. His words about families standing together through adversity carried the unmistakable authenticity of someone who had watched his loved ones face real challenges and had witnessed the transformative power of unconditional support. This moment represented a significant evolution in how the British monarchy communicated with its people. Previous generations of royals had maintained a more formal distance, sharing personal feelings only in the most carefully controlled circumstances. Charles was demonstrating that it was possible to be both appropriately regal and genuinely human, to honor the dignity of his office while acknowledging the reality of personal emotion. The production team recognized they were capturing something historically significant. The king was showing how modern monarchy could maintain its traditional authority while adapting to contemporary expectations of authenticity and emotional openness. His tribute to Catherine was becoming a model for how royal family members could honor each other while serving the broader needs of the nation. Charles's speech then took on an almost meditative quality as he reflected on the lessons that difficult periods could teach. Drawing on both his own experience and his observations of Catherine's journey, he spoke about how facing serious challenges could clarify what truly mattered in life. His words carried the weight of personal experience as he described how adversity could strip away superficial concerns and reveal the deeper sources of meaning and purpose. The king's reflection on gratitude was particularly moving. He spoke about how difficult experiences could paradoxically lead to a deeper appreciation for simple pleasures and everyday blessings. His audience could hear in his voice the authentic wonder of someone who had rediscovered the joy in moments that might previously have been taken for granted. This was another layer of his tribute to Catherine, acknowledging the profound gratitude that often emerges from successfully navigating serious illness. As Charles moved toward the climax of his address, his words began to focus on themes of renewal and hope. Speaking with the authority of someone who had witnessed both his own recovery and Catherine's ongoing journey, he painted a picture of possibility that felt both realistic and inspiring. His message was carefully balanced, acknowledging the genuine difficulty of health challenges while maintaining confidence in the human capacity for healing and growth. The king's discussion of hope was particularly sophisticated because it avoided both false optimism and paralyzing despair. Instead, Charles spoke about hope as an active choice, a decision to focus on possibilities rather than limitations, to invest in relationships and purposes that transcended individual circumstances. This perspective clearly reflected the approach that both he and Catherine had taken to their respective health challenges. Charles then delivered what would become one of the most quoted passages of his entire reign. Speaking directly to the camera with an intensity that made every viewer feel personally addressed, he spoke about the courage of ordinary people who chose to continue creating, contributing, and caring for others even when facing personal uncertainty. His words celebrated the human capacity to find meaning in service even during the most challenging periods of life. The cumulative effect of Charles's carefully layered tribute was becoming clear to everyone in the recording studio. He had created something unprecedented in royal communication, a message that honored a specific family member while speaking to universal human experiences, that maintained perfect constitutional appropriateness while conveying deep personal emotion, and that celebrated individual courage while encouraging broader social solidarity. As the king prepared to deliver the concluding sections of his address, the production team could sense that they had witnessed something special. This Christmas message would be remembered not just for its content but for its demonstration of how authentic leadership could honor both personal relationships and public responsibilities. Charles had found a way to let his heart speak through the crown, creating a new model for royal communication in the modern age. The atmosphere in the recording studio had transformed as King Charles III approached the final movements of his Christmas address. What had begun as a formal royal obligation had evolved into something far more profound and personal. The king's staff, accustomed to the measured cadences of traditional royal communication, found themselves witnessing a performance that transcended conventional boundaries while maintaining perfect respect for the dignity of the occasion. Charles could feel the weight of his words as he prepared to deliver the most delicate and important part of his tribute to Catherine. Throughout his address, he had been building toward this moment, laying a foundation of universal themes that would allow him to speak more directly about the specific challenges facing his family without violating their privacy or overstepping constitutional boundaries. The king's approach to this crucial section demonstrated the sophisticated understanding of communication that he had developed over decades of public service. He began by speaking about the transformative power of witnessing courage in others, about how observing someone face adversity with grace and determination could inspire entire communities to discover their own reserves of strength and resilience. His words carried the unmistakable authority of personal experience as he described the privilege of being close to someone who faced serious challenges with unwavering dignity. Charles spoke about how such individuals taught everyone around them profound lessons about what truly mattered in life, about the difference between superficial concerns and genuine priorities, about the ways that love and purpose could provide stability even when everything else felt uncertain. The beauty of the king's approach lay in its universality. While those who knew the royal family's recent struggles would immediately recognize his reference to Catherine's journey, his words applied equally to countless families across the Commonwealth who were dealing with their own health challenges. Charles was simultaneously honoring his daughter-in-law and speaking to the broader human experience of supporting loved ones through difficult periods. The king's voice took on an almost reverent quality as he spoke about the lessons that serious illness could teach about the preciousness of time and the importance of authentic connection. Drawing on both his own experience and his observations of Catherine's approach to her treatment, Charles described how facing mortality could strip away pretense and reveal the essential beauty of simple human relationships. His words about the healing power of love were particularly moving because they came from someone who had witnessed that power firsthand. Charles spoke about families who discovered new depths of connection when facing adversity together, about marriages that grew stronger through shared challenges, and about communities that rallied around their most vulnerable members. Every phrase was informed by his experience watching William and Catherine navigate her illness with extraordinary unity and mutual support. The king then delivered what many would later consider the most emotionally powerful moment of his entire address. Speaking with barely controlled emotion about the courage he had witnessed in those closest to him, Charles allowed his audience to glimpse the profound love and admiration he felt for Catherine without ever mentioning her name or explicitly referencing her illness. His description of someone who continued to serve others while facing personal challenges was so specific and heartfelt that it transcended political or constitutional considerations and touched something fundamental about human nature. Charles was demonstrating how authentic leadership sometimes meant allowing personal emotion to inform public communication, how genuine care for individuals could enhance rather than compromise one's ability to serve the broader community. The production team recognized that they were capturing a defining moment not just in Charles's reign, but in the evolution of royal communication itself. The king was showing how modern monarchy could maintain its traditional dignity while embracing a more authentic and emotionally honest relationship with the public. His tribute to Catherine was becoming a masterclass in how to balance personal feeling with public responsibility. Charles's discussion of hope was informed by the complex reality of living with serious illness. Rather than offering simple platitudes, he spoke with the nuanced understanding of someone who had learned that hope could coexist with uncertainty, that courage didn't mean the absence of fear but, rather the decision to continue moving forward despite that fear. His words carried the weight of authentic experience and genuine wisdom. The king's reflection on gratitude was particularly profound because it emerged from real experience rather than theoretical understanding. He spoke about how facing significant challenges could lead to a deeper appreciation for the love of family, the dedication of healthcare professionals, and the support of communities. His words painted a picture of someone who had discovered that even in the darkest moments, there were always reasons for thankfulness. Charles then addressed what he called the ripple effects of courage, describing how one person's brave response to adversity could inspire countless others to face their own challenges with greater confidence and determination. This was another layer of his tribute to Catherine, acknowledging how her public handling of her illness had provided comfort and inspiration to many other families dealing with similar situations. The king's discussion of these ripple effects was based on genuine observation rather than hopeful speculation. Throughout Catherine's treatment, he had witnessed the outpouring of support from the public and had seen how her example had encouraged others facing health challenges. Charles was acknowledging this impact while using it to illustrate the broader principle that individual acts of courage could have far-reaching positive effects. As the king moved toward the conclusion of his tribute, his words took on a forward-looking quality that balanced realism with optimism. He spoke about the possibility of renewal and recovery while acknowledging that such journeys were never simple or guaranteed. His message was carefully calibrated to offer genuine hope without minimizing the reality of ongoing challenges. Charles's reflection on the future was informed by his understanding that healing was rarely a linear process, that recovery often involved setbacks and disappointments alongside moments of progress and celebration. His words offered comfort to anyone dealing with long-term health challenges while maintaining the kind of honest hope that could sustain people through extended periods of uncertainty. The king then delivered what many constitutional scholars would later identify as a revolutionary moment in royal communication. Speaking with evident personal investment about the importance of never giving up on the people we love, Charles allowed his audience to witness the depth of his commitment to Catherine and his family while simultaneously encouraging them to extend similar dedication to their own loved ones. This moment represented a significant evolution in how the monarchy related to its people. Charles was demonstrating that sharing authentic emotion and genuine care could enhance rather than diminish his authority as king. By allowing his love for Catherine to inform his public message, he was creating a new model for royal leadership that combined traditional dignity with contemporary authenticity. The cumulative effect of Charles's layered tribute was becoming clear to everyone in the recording studio. He had created something unprecedented in royal communication, weaving together personal emotion and public service, family love and constitutional duty, individual struggle and universal themes. His gentle regal salute to Catherine was proving to be far more powerful than any direct statement could have been. As the king prepared for the final section of his address, the production team could sense that they had witnessed something historically significant. This Christmas message would be remembered as a turning point in royal communication, a demonstration of how authentic leadership could honor personal relationships while serving the broader needs of the nation. Charles had found a way to speak as both monarch and family member, creating a new standard for royal authenticity. As King Charles III entered the final movements of his historic Christmas address, the recording studio seemed suspended in a moment of profound anticipation. The king had spent the better part of his speech weaving an intricate tapestry of tribute to Catherine, and now he faced the delicate challenge of bringing his message to a conclusion that would honor both his constitutional role and his personal feelings while leaving his audience with a sense of hope and unity. The concluding section of Charles's address would prove to be as carefully crafted as everything that had come before. Rather than ending with a dramatic flourish or explicit statement, he chose to let his tribute to Catherine culminate in a broader meditation on the values that bound communities together during difficult times. His approach demonstrated the sophisticated understanding of communication that had made his tribute so effective throughout the address. Charles began his conclusion by reflecting on the lessons that his year of personal challenges had taught him about the fundamental importance of human connection. Speaking with the authority of someone who had experienced both his own health crisis and watched a beloved family member face similar challenges, the king painted a picture of how adversity could reveal the essential bonds that held families and communities together. His words about the healing power of love and support carried particular weight because they emerged from direct experience rather than theoretical understanding. Charles spoke about how he had witnessed the transformative effect of knowing that others cared, about how simple gestures of concern and encouragement could provide strength during the darkest moments. His audience could hear in his voice the authentic gratitude of someone who had been sustained by such support. The king's reflection on community solidarity was informed by the overwhelming public response to both his own cancer diagnosis and Catherine's health challenges. He had seen firsthand how news of their struggles had prompted an outpouring of support from across the Commonwealth and beyond. Charles was using his platform to acknowledge this kindness while encouraging his audience to extend similar compassion to everyone in their communities who might be facing difficulties. Charles then delivered what would become one of the most quoted passages of his entire reign, a meditation on the nature of true strength that was clearly informed by his observations of Catherine's approach to her illness. Speaking with evident admiration, he described how genuine courage often looked different from what people might expect, how real strength sometimes meant asking for help, accepting support, and allowing others to care for you while continuing to care for them in return. This reflection on strength was revolutionary in its challenge to traditional notions of stoic independence. Charles was suggesting that the strongest people were often those who understood how to build networks of mutual support, who recognized that vulnerability could be a source of connection rather than weakness, and who found ways to serve others even while dealing with their own challenges. The king's words carried the authority of personal experience as he spoke about the courage required to maintain hope during uncertain times. His description of hope as an active choice rather than a passive emotion reflected the approach that both he and Catherine had taken to their respective health journeys. This wasn't blind optimism but, rather a determined decision to focus on possibilities for healing and growth while acknowledging the reality of ongoing challenges. Charles's discussion of legacy was particularly moving as he spoke about how individuals could make lasting contributions even during periods of personal difficulty. His words painted a picture of people whose impact extended far beyond their immediate circumstances, who continued to inspire and encourage others even while facing their own struggles. While never naming Catherine directly, his description perfectly captured how her grace under pressure had provided comfort and inspiration to countless families dealing with similar situations. The king then addressed what he called the quiet revolutions that happened when ordinary people chose to respond to extraordinary challenges with grace, determination, and continued service to others. His words celebrated those who found ways to transform personal adversity into broader positive impact, who used their experiences to develop deeper empathy and more effective ways of helping others. This celebration of quiet revolutionaries was another layer of Charles's tribute to Catherine, acknowledging how her approach to her illness had demonstrated a different kind of leadership, one based on authenticity, vulnerability, and continued commitment to service rather than traditional displays of strength or authority. The king was suggesting that this model of leadership had important lessons for everyone facing challenges. As Charles moved toward the very end of his address, his words took on a tone of profound gratitude that encompassed both personal appreciation and broader acknowledgement of the support systems that sustain communities during difficult times. He spoke about the privilege of witnessing courage in those closest to him while simultaneously celebrating the countless acts of kindness and support that happened throughout his realm every day. The king's expression of gratitude was carefully balanced to honor Catherine's journey while speaking to the universal experience of receiving and giving support during challenging periods. His words acknowledged the healthcare professionals who provided expert care, the family members who offered unwavering love, the friends who provided practical support, and the broader community that had sent encouragement and good wishes. Charles then delivered what many would consider the emotional climax of his address, a passage about the transformative power of love that transcended individual circumstances and spoke to fundamental truths about human nature. Speaking with barely controlled emotion, he described how witnessing someone you care about face serious challenges with grace and determination could deepen your appreciation for the preciousness of every moment and the importance of expressing love while you have the chance. This reflection on love was informed by the king's experience watching his family navigate Catherine's illness, but it spoke to universal truths that would resonate with anyone who had supported a loved one through difficult times. Charles was demonstrating how personal experience could inform public wisdom, how individual struggles could reveal broader truths about what mattered most in life. The king's final words brought together all the themes he had woven throughout his address, creating a conclusion that honored Catherine while speaking to the hopes and challenges facing his entire realm. His message was one of realistic optimism, acknowledging that life would continue to bring challenges while expressing confidence in the human capacity to face those challenges with courage, love, and mutual support. As Charles delivered his traditional Christmas blessing, the weight of his subtle tribute to Catherine seemed to settle over the recording studio like a benediction. He had accomplished something remarkable, creating a message that honored his daughter-in-law's courage while serving the broader needs of his people, that balanced personal emotion with constitutional responsibility, and that demonstrated how authentic leadership could enhance rather than compromise royal authority. The production team recognized that they had witnessed something historically significant. The king's gentle regal salute to Catherine had established a new standard for royal communication, showing how monarchy could adapt to contemporary expectations of authenticity while maintaining its essential dignity and effectiveness. Charles had proved that it was possible to speak as both king and family member, creating a model of leadership that was both deeply personal and profoundly public. As the camera stopped rolling and the formal conclusion of the address was completed, everyone in the studio understood that they had been part of creating something special. The king's Christmas message would be remembered not just for its content but for its demonstration of how love and duty could work together to create communication that was both constitutionally appropriate and emotionally authentic. In the quiet moments after recording ended, Charles sat in contemplation, knowing that he had found a way to honor Catherine's courage while serving his role as king. His gentle regal salute had become a masterpiece of royal communication, a tribute that transcended traditional boundaries while maintaining perfect respect for the dignity of the crown. The message he had just delivered would touch hearts across the Commonwealth and establish a new understanding of what it meant to be both monarch and family member in the modern age.